You got to own it. Nobody's coming to save you. And so if maybe your chief's not doing all the things that he should be doing for the agency, don't care. You need to take care of you. You need to make your self-care a priority. And in speaking with Ken, we want to talk about culture. Look in the mirror. See, the culture of you becomes the culture of us, right? And so if you can change you and that person looking back in the mirror, that spreads. Just like toxicity can spread, that empowering and that self-care, self-leadership component. Don't sell yourself short, man. You're amazing. You do a job that the majority of the people on the face of this earth want nothing to do with, and you do it well and with excellence and nobility. So take a look in the mirror, man. Love the person looking back at you, and know that the culture of you will become the culture of us.
Welcome to another one of our roundtables, and I'm just going to announce we have officially named this podcast. We're in our first month of the relaunch, and our name is officially blah, 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 something wellness. And you read that right. If you see that, we didn't just be like, wait, what? No, it's really blah, 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 something wellness. And the reason that we did that is because, as you'll learn from this group of people and on these conversations, in the first responder field, if you're into wellness, then you are into wellness, and it becomes a very small world, a lot of familiar faces. However, those first responders that are really needing the wellness, all they really hear is the blah, blah, blah. I don't know. It was something about wellness. And they're not showing up. They're not going to the conferences. They're not listening to the podcast. They're not reading the articles. They're not doing the work, and they're still unhappy. So, with that said, this is the blah, 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 something wellness podcast, and we are joined by chiefs and leaders in the wellness space. And it's pretty cool because we're coming in from all sorts of different spots across the country. So it's not just one spot. And today we are going to talk about what's working, what's not working, how departments can improve their wellness space. So with that, I'm your host, Tami Sharp, and we're going to go around. I'm going to have everybody introduce yourselves real quick. I'm going to start with our team with Mike Lawson because these are some familiar faces, and then we're going to come around. So Mike, will you take it away?
Sure. Thanks for having me. Mike Lawson. I did 24 years with the San Diego Sheriff's Department. I've been retired now 2 years. The last year and a half, I've been the wellness coordinator, the first ever wellness coordinator for Chula Vista Police Department, which is just south of San Diego. I could actually see the border, a couple hills by my house. So that's kind of where I'm at. Yeah, we're doing some really good things, really innovative, proactive things, and just excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Ken.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for letting me join here today. My name's Ken Koch, 35 plus years in law enforcement, 23 years with the Flagstaff Police Department in Northern Arizona, left there as an assistant chief, went on to be the chief of police in Taos, New Mexico for a little while, finished up my sworn career as a deputy chief and chief for the University of Colorado at Boulder, and had the opportunity to come back into the profession as a civilian, where I managed a regional law enforcement training center here in Northern Colorado, and got a really interesting perspective on the difference between the sworn side and the civilian side of our profession. Hopefully I'll get a chance to share a little bit about that in this podcast.
Love that. Thank you. John.
Hey, everybody. John Kelly, 30-year veteran of law enforcement down in South Florida. And I started a wellness leadership program in retirement. And I travel the country now, helping our brothers and sisters be better human beings.
Awesome. Thank you. And Todd.
Todd Stockburger here from Cherry Valley, Illinois, an active police chief here in the Midwest. Very appreciative of the opportunity to interact, to share what I can, and I certainly believe I will learn as much as I'm able to contribute. So always keep an open mind and see what I can learn and take away. So thank you, Tami.
Thank you. I am so excited for this conversation. And I'm also, real quick, just to clear up any kind of confusion out there. So, because we have John on here, so we are law enforcement coaching. He is law enforcement life coach. We are not the same company or in that. However, we always say there's no competition in the wellness space. We are mutually supportive and we're all in it for the right reasons and helping people.
100%.
So, whatever website you go to, or if, like you're in good hands.
No doubt. No, it's certainly going to take all of us to right the ship, right?
Yes, absolutely. So, as we kick this off, what I want to do first is when you guys hear the term self-care, what does that mean to you?
When I hear self-care, I think priority number one being me as far as a holistic approach. What can I do to make me a better person, to make me a better leader, to make me a better husband, a better dad? And that just goes part and parcel with taking a look in the mirror every morning and saying, how can I be my best and what's it take to be the best? Whether it's jumping on the treadmill for a couple miles after work, not usually before work because there's lots of stuff going on around the house. So generally on the back side of the shift. So just prioritizing me, and that makes me a better person and better, more well-rounded.
I look at it, it's not really self-care, it's self-leadership, right? I think we make it more complicated than it needs to be. And so I think that when we lead ourselves well, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, right? I think that translates. So just to echo what Todd was saying, it is all about you. And that can be uncomfortable to say because we know that without me taking care of me, everybody else in my orbit suffers. So I think it's really self leadership, how you lead yourself, because eventually, right, we're going to lead others, and if we're not leading ourselves well, then I think we start failing across all platforms.
I really like that because words have power, and a lot of times we say things, but we'll be putting some word out there and we're getting exactly what we're asking for, but it doesn't necessarily resonate. And so some people don't resonate with the term self-care. They might affiliate that with, massage and stuff that's just like, no, that's not for me. So I really like that you're reframing that as self-leadership because somebody might be like, oh, that actually makes more sense to me. I know, Ken, you talked about earlier in a previous episode that you were having an issue with motivation and then you flipped it to discipline. And I thought that was just brilliant because on that hit home for me because I'm super motivated, but I've had to learn how to be disciplined as an entrepreneur that I'm working from my home office all the time and my couch is a couple feet away. So I'm motivated, but I have had to train to be disciplined. So do you want to talk a little more on that one?
Yeah, so that topic came up. We were talking about the dark space that we have all probably experienced at some point in our lives, whether you're in law enforcement or not, right? And I was in a space where I couldn't get motivated to get out of bed. I couldn't get motivated to get off the couch. I couldn't get motivated to get out of the house. But I was really wanting to get back to working out and get back in shape. I'd let myself go for several years. And I ended up having a coaching session with one of our peers. And we talked a lot about motivation. And I just don't have the motivation, don't have the motivation. And he made the point that, you've got the motivation. What you're lacking is the discipline to go out and act on it. And once that perspective shift occurred for me up here, I got out of bed and I got out of the house and I got into the gym. And the first couple of times it was hard, but the third time it was easier. The fourth time it was even easier. And then it started to become fun again. So that shift in perspective, right, is what really got me back into the self-care space that really got me back on track.
Yeah, so for me, I think, as first responders, we give, and we give more. And then when it's time to give to ourselves, we're exhausted. We don't have time. And it's not excuses. It's just we're really good givers of helping other people, but we tend to lack in helping ourselves. And we just have to do better at that.
So I love that. So on the individual level, I think we've really drilled it in. Hopefully everybody's listening to all of these episodes because there is so much wisdom in each of them, but you have to take care of yourself. You cannot give from an empty cup. So with this panel, let's talk a little bit about the departments and the leadership because there are some departments that are really progressive. They're really ahead of the game. They are doing everything that they can to make sure that there's resources for their people. There's a challenge that comes with that, however, I'm going to circle back to. And then there are some departments that are just like, no, we don't have time. We don't have the funding. We can't do it. And they're very much old school. And there are some, unfortunately, I've ran into a few of these old school where I didn't have any help, so they should just suck it up. And we got to work on that one. For the progressive departments that are providing the resources, I talk to chiefs and leaders pretty much on a daily basis, and I know that there are departments that really care about their people. The issue is, I think this is universal, pretty much from everybody we've talked to in the wellness space, getting people to actually use the resources, to remember that they have them, to show up to the trainings, if it's not mandated, to actually volunteer to show up, to take that time. There's so much that we can unpack here, but what do you guys think? I'm just gonna, yep. Take it away.
I'll jump in on this one because I want to circle back to your first question. You asked each of us individually, what does self-care mean to us as individuals? And the chief in me was going, well, it's about me, just like Todd said very eloquently, but it's also about my responsibility for the people that I'm responsible for in showing that that's an expectation that I have of them, right? To take care of themselves. And the best way to do that is through your own actions. Words don't carry anything in our profession. The number one complaint I heard time and time again from every department I've ever been associated with was the communication in our organization sucks, right? And it's not for lack of trying. It's because communication as a form of talking does not deliver the message. Actions speak louder than words. So as a chief, as a leader, I always felt it was my responsibility to demonstrate when I was doing self-care and then communicate, folks, I expect this of you as well. And I think that carried a pretty resonant message.
Awesome.
I think what Ken hit on, I think, so I'm going to be that guy now. Okay. If we're not leading by example, right? If the chief doesn't prioritize or lead himself well, if he's not fit physically, emotionally, spiritually, those are empty words, man. If I'm rank and file and I'm looking at the boss and the boss is 50 pounds, 100, overweight, looks like trash in his uniform. Wait, what are we doing now? What's the program today? Right? There's no buy-in. And so leadership, heavy lies the crown, man. Heavy lies the crown. If you're going to be in that position, then lead well. And that means having your act together. That means incorporating all the things that you want your people to be doing, make them a part of your life. And so with all that being said, ultimately, right, at the end of the day, we've got a million programs and we've got initiatives and we've got, endless resources, but there's no accountability. Like if everybody can just show up, however, well then, we need to be kicked in the ass, right? We need that, right? And so you can give an hour every day to work out, but if nobody's monitoring that and nobody's making sure you're actually in there pushing some weight or doing some cardio, and you got me now. I'm going to shut up in 30 seconds. We're the worst. The rank and file want. They want. And then when they they bitch about what they got. It's never enough, right? There's, you only get an hour. I really need 2 hours. Hey, no, how about you show up fit and we give you this time to refine, right? To come together as a squad, or to do some other things. But, I get really angry at us because it's never enough, man. You can have wellness rooms. You could have an hour every shift to meditate, box breathe, and decompress. And there are people doing that on their own, not being compensated. They're showing up to work mentally prepared. So there comes a point, man, where you just get angry and you go, no, enough. Take care of your shit. I'm done.
Oh, kudos, first of all. Love having you here. We can go on tour together and go yell at all the departments. But here's the thing. So from the like clinical side of that wanting more, first of all, that's factual, but the wanting more that's a symptom. When somebody wants more, that is somebody that is not practicing self-care, because you're expecting all of these external things to fill that void and make you happy. And if you're not doing the work, like, I don't know if you guys have ever been in a relationship with somebody like this, or you've known somebody that's in a relationship where this person needs, like, I need your time, I need your energy, I need you to compliment me, I need you to tell me I'm doing a good job, I need validation. And it's never enough, because if you're not doing the work to heal and take care of yourself, you're like a colander. You can have a fire hose coming at you and it's just going to go right back out, because you have not created the vessel to actually hold space for yourself. So if it's not enough, it's not enough, that's not the department's fault. You got to check in with yourself, because mindset is everything, and being grateful for what you do have. And if you want more, if it really isn't enough, but you're clear on that and you're like, hey, we have this gym, but it's all broken down equipment and we don't have time, then there's, an actual roadmap to get the improvements, but you got to, start at the baseline.
Yeah, well said. That explains a lot, Tammy.
Todd, what do you have to say? Welcome to the conversation.
Well, to go along with that, the baseline, it's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Take care of the most basic need first. And I keep coming back to this. Maybe it sounds selfish, but the most basic need is me. If I'm not fit and ready to go, and something so basic as if I'm not at work on time when I'm supposed to be here at 8 a.m. sharp, then I think the rest of the day, where's the leadership there? And like has been alluded to, you lead by example. Ken hit on that very, very well. Everybody's watching, right? I have 20 policemen and they're watching, whether I know it or not, in the back or front of my mind. I know those officers see when I come in, when I go home, what kind of mood I'm in, and what do I bring to the table. So if I say I can go out and do a couple miles, I can do a couple miles and back that up. If the police officer says, hey, chief, we could use some more workout equipment, well, send me the email, send me the quote. If it's reasonable, I'll talk to the powers to be, and we'll see if we can get that in to boost up the workout room. So I think just holistically, again, a good place to land with that. Really liked what Ken and John said too, to go along with that, and just prioritizing and how you do it, how you go about it.
So you just touched on a thing. So this is something that I've seen with departments and a lot of the chiefs that are really, really trying. Their people are like, we need this, we need that. And they say, okay, go create the plan, because everybody is busy. Everybody's got a lot of stuff on their plate. So what they've seen is, because we run surveys with all the departments that we work with, and we get, they're very honest on these surveys, very honest.
Sure
and
they
I
are.
will never, I've learned right out the gate, we will never just pass off one of our surveys to command. We sit down on a call like this and we coach them through, because when you get, honest feedback, it's very hard to keep that ego in check. You're like, what? Especially when you're trying and it's not hitting. But what can be a frustration is they're like, I said, go. You want this in place. You want this program. Go write it up. Go figure it out. Tell me, do all the work so that I can go take it to wherever I have to take it to go get the approval. I'm not going to have time to do the research for you. And then a lot of people just don't. And then they still bitch and complain that nothing's getting done. It's like, well, there's self-care and then self-leadership, self-lead. If you want something, and fight for it. And here's the thing, the expectations, you might not get it right away. Law enforcement is slow. From a business perspective, I'm just like, oh man. But it is slow and it's slower than you think. So give yourself, like, if you have a brilliant idea, you're like, we'd like to get this implemented in the next 6 months, just know it might take 2 years. It doesn't mean that it's not happening. It's got to go through all of the things. And then once you do get something in place, this is what's frustrating, what I've seen in the wellness space as well, is they get stuff approved, they get it in place, they have it in for 6 months or a year, and then they're like, oh, it doesn't work. And then they cancel it. Or it was working, and then, oh, well, we're going to try something else. You got to stick with it. It takes a year for people to learn to trust and know that this is a solid thing and actually know that it's reliable. So if you're going to implement a wellness program, implement it and plan on keeping it around for a while.
So just to very briefly here, to go along with that, what I found is when I task somebody with coming up with maybe the quotes or email me what they think they need or want, it empowers them all throughout. And like you said, if those emails drop off, if I don't see the quotes, if the requests stop coming, then we know where that officer is at. How serious are you or were you about this initiative? So again, I always put that back on the police officer or as much as possible. And then we sit down and go from there with it.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'll go, like, for me, like, being retired now 2 years, I see things so much more clearly. Like, this is a culture change, right, guys? Like, I think most of us, I'm looking across the panel, we got some years on. A lot of this wellness stuff wasn't around when we started. At least in California, I don't know about the other states. There's now a learning domain strictly for wellness. I don't know how many hours it is, but that took time. That I didn't have that, however many years ago I went to the academy. And as far as wellness, I think we're pretty good reactive. So if there's an officer involved shooting, we're good at getting resources. We're not very good with the proactive part, and we got to do better. I have officers coming to me with 9 years on, and in my mind, I'm thinking kind of old school, like, whoa, they're close to halfway done. At least in California, not in California. They're like, no, Mike, I have like 25 more years, and they're exhausted. And so we have to invest in our people on the front end. I mean, we have to treat it like a business. It is a business. We're paying for these people to go to the academy. I know it's different for each state, how much it costs to get somebody through the academy and through training, but we need to invest in our people on the front end. And your return on your investment is going to be a better officer, a better person. It just is. And again, this takes time. Trust me, I've been doing this wellness stuff for 10 plus years, and it's been frustrating. I'll have to be honest with my old department, my current department, like I get those roadblocks, but I look back and I see some of the things we've done, and it's happening. I was at a wellness conference this week in California, 250 people from agencies all over California. And man, talk about a recharge. Like, it's happening. Like, departments are doing some really cool things. And as a wellness coordinator, I get to see those and bring those back to my department. Guess what? So-and-so department's doing, and share those, things that they're doing, proactive things. And, hopefully we are moving the needle. It's just, I think Tami hit it on the head. We have to appreciate some of the things, some of the wins, but keep plugging along.
I love that you are so involved and get to go out. You go to pretty much everything. Your finger is on that pulse of wellness and what's coming. And California, from my understanding, we can talk about this because we really span across the country. California is more progressive and open-minded in wellness. I mean, San Diego, you guys, first of all, you have like juice bars and stuff on every corner. So you are already just culturally a little bit more wellness minded. So how is that? And Arizona is pretty good, I gotta say. So being from Washington and Hawaii and then being in Arizona, I've had the fortune to be in very wellness minded spaces. However, we do work with a lot of departments up in Washington and with law enforcement. It's been very frustrating. Law enforcement specifically has just taken one slap in the face after the other. Their hands have been tied with laws and politics and all of that stuff. So the wellness factor up there, even though it's available, there's a little bit of a chip on the shoulder there we can kind of unpack. But how is wellness just in general for you guys where you're at across the country?
Well, I'll start off. When I was beginning of my career in Arizona, as I think Mike said earlier, there was no wellness program. There was no internal department, peer support team, none of that. If you were involved in an officer-involved shooting, you were mandated to go talk to a psychiatrist for at least one session. Then it was up to you if you wanted to go back. That was the extent of it, right? The positive that I take away from that era of our profession was it was on you. It was your responsibility to take care of your self-care. And I think that should be the foundation of what we're trying to do and accomplish today in growing wellness. You have to make sure your people understand it's their responsibility to take care of themselves. It's not your department's responsibility. That's how we get the proactive door open and close the reactive door, if you will, at least from as wide as it is now. Here in Colorado, a lot of time has gone by since I was in Arizona. The profession as a whole has grown. Almost every department I'm aware of in Northern Colorado has some form of peer support. The smaller departments rely on their neighboring departments for that kind of support and that kind of resource as well. A lot of our departments here have onboard psychiatrists or psychologists that actually serve the entire department. It's night and day from where it was when I started. So with that hindsight, it's very encouraging to see that growth. But I also know we've got a hell of a long way still to go. And the biggest challenge is getting the buy-in at the individual level so people will really start taking this seriously.
John, how is it for you? Florida's a little bit more wellness minded too, right?
Florida is awesome. I've had the pleasure of interacting with a bunch of departments down here. And so that ownership piece, they make the resources available. Now, 30 years ago, down in South Florida, none of these conversations were taking place. They weren't taking place anywhere in the country. So I think maybe a distinction needs to be made between like wellness and working out. Like the job's always been physical. You're always encouraged to be strong and athletic. I think the missing component and the missing conversation over those 30 years was your mental health, right? So that was non-existent, right? And so I think we've given up a couple things. And it may be generational. Gentlemen, you can chime in and check me on this. But the guys and girls don't go to shift parties. They don't have relationships outside of work. And I think there's a lack of camaraderie. There's a lack of caring amongst the troops. And I think, that buddy system, that checking on each other, I think that's gotten a little corrupted. I think we forgot that I don't have to like you to care about you. If we're going to be in like this thin blue line, man, it's not a bumper sticker, right? It's a commitment to being there for each other, to support each other, to care. And so when we don't care, I think that creates an environment and a culture shift that has to happen. And I'm a bottom up guy. I mean, it takes us, the collective, to change the culture here. And I think that, a lot of the sheriffs and bosses down here are doing their best, but ultimately it's on the individual. And, Broward, that was my old department. They just spent like $75 million on a new training facility. State of the art. The gym is like none other that you've ever. Professional football teams wish they had a facility like this, right? And so what the sheriff has done, he's mandated, right? No, it's not an option. You're in a physical. He's mandated everybody. There's a kiosk where you check in. It's tracked. All of his command staff. If you are in a leadership position, your ass better be in that gym 3-4 times a week. And so he's sending a message that this is what's acceptable. Anything less is unacceptable, and there'll be consequences, right? The other side of it is you're an at-will employee, anything above the rank of lieutenant. So we're going to hold your feet to the fire. And this is one area of leadership where you're going to have to perform. Holy smokes. We're going to get results or you're not going to have a job. We don't do that. We don't tell anybody that they're in jeopardy of not having a job if they can't physically perform. That is a conversation no one has ever heard. And so I think that they're taking that to the next level and it's making people uncomfortable with me. There's a standard. Like I did that in the academy 20 years ago. I have to do it now. Job has just gotten harder after 20 years. Hasn't gotten easier, right? So that's one example of I think, Florida getting it right.
There's so much because I have questions for you guys. Well, so with the mandating, because I think that's great. I think because sometimes you have to have those standards in place. But I also know that there's a lot of chiefs and leaders that are trying not to mandate, and even us with coaching, we came in to the departments and we're like, we don't want to mandate sessions. We want to be such a good resource that they choose to work with us. But when it's an option, especially if you're not paying out of pocket for it. So if a department, this is an issue that we found, if a department's paying for our services and the individual's not paying, there's no skin in the game. So now we just kind of come an afterthought of like, I know it's there, but I don't need it right now. And we're not mandating it. So sometimes it is like, no, you do need to check in. You need to do this.
Somebody's got to be an adult. We got to have an adult in the room to say, hey, these are the requirements. This is what you're called to do. You signed up for it. This is the standard. And, admittedly, we've gotten away from that, right? But I think bringing back some standards and holding people accountable and not dismissing them if they don't pass the standard. But we're going to support and encourage and give and maybe they need a dietitian. And these are all people that we have on staff down there. So it's a holistic approach to our people being better, overall human beings. And I think we're like water sometimes. If we take the path of least resistance. If I don't have to, well, all right, I'll do that tomorrow. And I think when we remove that option, no, you're going to do that today. And then tomorrow and the day after, or you can do something else. And not popular, but effective.
Well, and I also see, because one of the things that I could see going wrong with that is people are afraid to get in trouble or they don't want to career punishment. Like if you're not performing a certain way, if you're not doing a certain thing, there's going to be job punishment, but then there's also the judgment. And we've talked about this many times, but cops are great. You guys will run out and put your lives on the line for a stranger, but you are the first to take each other out. You will, 100%. If you smell blood in the water, it's a feeding frenzy. And one of the things that we're trying to teach is if you have somebody that, okay, so maybe you are mandated to go work out, but they're not, even though they know they should, or they're showing up late, they're calling out. A lot of times people are like, oh, that, I don't know if you guys call them this, but rods, retired on duty, or, that's lazy or whatever, where from the wellness perspective, what we're saying is, hey, these are some red flag. You need to check in with this person. Don't just ask them how they're doing. They say good and then let it go. Like really check in with them and create the safe space being like, what's really going on with you? And let's see, maybe you should talk to somebody and create the culture that it's okay to not be okay. Ken and Todd, you're very quiet.
Actually, I turned my head here. I'm taking notes. I told you I'd take more away than I contribute. So I've absolutely done that by now, just a few minutes in here. So to take a step back just a little bit, as far as Illinois, I wrote a grant a few months ago. And within my grant was a number of things I put in there, coaching, exercise equipment, an annual stipend for the police officers. And the state looked at that and they granted me everything that I put in for. So that tells me the state of Illinois, they're on board with, if you will, or they're moving that needle themselves or wanting to move the needle towards the coaching, a holistic approach. So we had the financial component, we had the physical component with exercise equipment, and then everything else in between with whether it's coaching, software to track certain calls that's going on to make sure we check on the policemen. And again, just almost a one size fits all, because an officer can gravitate toward, if he thinks he really wants more coaching, he can do that. He could do the exercise equipment. Of course, the annual stipend, that who couldn't use more money, right? So again, that tells me the state was on board with what I wrote, and they want to support it. Otherwise, they wouldn't have granted any or a portion of it. So very appreciative of that and how that came together.
Well, and I want to just take a moment and honor your leadership, because you have done something that we haven't seen very many people do. And how we got to meet was because you took a different approach. So for the audience listening, I received an email or something being like, hey, I'm from this department. So I was ready to come on and be like, all right, let's tell you what we're about. And he's like, oh no, I already looked you up. I applied for a grant. I got the grant. I have the funding. I would like to work with you. And I'm like, I'm sorry,
Nice.
what? I don't even know what to do with that.
How about that?
If
Yeah, we
more
spoke on
leaders
a
would do that, because I always hear we can't afford it. You can't afford not to. Not just my company, just resources. Just there is the I can't afford it argument. I understand that budgets are tight and we had a defund the police movement and there's all of these things. There is still so much money out there. There are grants everywhere. That's one of the best business lessons that we learned from a multi-billion dollar top leading tech company. What we got to see when the curtain was pulled was they have an entire department dedicated to grant writing, that they go out, that's how they get their funding. So when a department says, oh, we can't afford your product, oh, don't worry, we can take care of you. Yes, we can. You can. Grants are out there. There are so many grants. I don't know how it is across the country. Here in Arizona, we have the casinos. By law, they have to give a certain percentage to law enforcement. And we've seen departments saying, no, we can't take that money. They feel like it's a handout or charity and they're too proud to take it. And it's like, no, 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 it's not charity. They have to legally obligated to give that money. It needs to go somewhere. So why wouldn't you take that and invest it in your people? That's one of my big pet peeves. I'm like, you're telling me there's no money, but you're saying no because we're too good for that money. Money's money. But anyway, but thank you, because as a leader, as a chief, you have an innovative approach that I think a lot could learn from. So thank you for that.
welcome. And I remember that Sunday afternoon conversation first very, very well, Tami. So thank you.
Yeah, you blew my mind.
Yeah, this actually is the first I heard of this, Chief. So congratulations. I just want to point out that obviously it can be done if the leader of the organization is committed to making it happen. And Todd, I'm sure you know anyone who's been in any leadership role in the executive level of a police department, fire department, or anywhere else. You're pulled in so many different directions by your peer division leaders, by your leadership, by your elected officials. You're expected to basically run the organization, but also safeguard the entire community. And one of the most important lessons I learned, and this was years ago, I'll be the first to admit it, I haven't walked in these shoes in a while, but I had to sit down with my city manager and say, listen, if you want me to run the police department to the best of my ability, you need to rein back on the things you're expecting me to do outside the four walls of my department. And I had to have the administrative courage to have that conversation with him. Luckily, I worked for a city manager who was open to that and received the message the way it was intended. I wanted to be the best police chief I could, and that meant focusing my attention to what was going on inside the four walls of our organization and the people who made it what it was. And once he understood that message, my time got freed up and I was able to give more attention to communicating internally in the organization, expectations, to basically showing what my expectations were, and then inspecting. John made a great point. You know, what gets inspected gets done. If you got to check into the kiosk and it's tracked whether you're showing up in the gym or not, you're going to show up in the gym, right? So setting that kind of a culture in the organization takes time. And if you're pulled in 6 different directions as a chief and you don't have the administrative courage to step up and say, wait a second, I need to back off for a little while because I'm trying to implement cultural change and improvement in the organization. That's really one of the top jobs of any executive leader in an organization, in my opinion.
Thanks for that. Like you said, it's the courageous conversations, and I feel very supported by this municipality, the board. So I feel very fortunate. And like I said, with the grant, we're about halfway through the grant with the process. And the grant was predicated on as a recruiting and retention grant. So I tried to think way outside of the box. And honestly, what could I get out of the grant that the municipality might not be as apt to pay for, at least early on? So what can I do for a test run, if you will, and show them what we can do with the state's money, and then hopefully pick it up from there in the future.
Well, and I want to do a little humble brag for you because it's important, and knock on wood, not to jinx you, but it is worth mentioning you are fully staffed. And last we talked, you had a wait list, which across the country is not the conversation at all. So you are absolutely doing something right. So I would encourage anybody that's listening, the leaders, feel free. I mean, reach out to us, reach out to him, be like, hey, how are you doing that? And don't be too proud. Be like, how are you doing that? So I guess I will ask you, like, how are you doing that? I mean, you're taking an innovative, proactive approach, and really, just kudos, because that's not happening across.
I'm sure there's a little bit of luck involved there too. I appreciate the kind words and the very gracious comment. So it's like running a marathon. We're just taking it at everybody's own speed as far as the check-ins and knowing when and where to push and how to push. Being a smaller department, the sergeants are pretty dialed in with their officers. So whether it's the one-on-ones or the roll call trainings, and just every little bit helps. And probably the biggest thing, like everybody here, I'm sure will agree with, it's an enormous time investment in the police officer. And I keep saying policeman. Unfortunately, I don't have any females on staff. So when I say policeman, I don't mean any disrespect to any female officer that's out there or not with my department yet. So again, just kind of that one-on-one approach. And does it mean coming in a little bit earlier, staying late, or just an extra, hey, hi, how are you? After a board meeting, I'm here late anyways. Take a couple minutes, see that policeman, look him in the eye and say, how are you? And anything I can do for you. But again, I'm sure there's a lot of luck involved with being staffed as well. It's just all the stars have aligned. We've been staffed for a while, and I'm very blessed.
Well, you just nailed one simple but profound thing that from every officer that I have talked to, and it's a lot, leadership that takes the time to say hi, to make the eye contact, to come out of the office, to check in. That is what I have heard universally. Those are the good leaders. Those are the ones that you remember. It's the ones that I know that there was a department that had leadership change, and the chief doesn't even know anybody's name really. He's in the office, he does his job, comes out, does the press conferences and what needs to do, does the photo ops. Nobody feels like they even know him at all. And from the chief that was before, that chief was, he would literally show up on scene if you needed cover. And so it was a hard shift for everybody. Do you guys have stuff to say? Or I also want to kind of talk about the sergeant level, because the sergeants really do set the tone for a lot of the wellness.
I just want to talk real quick about grants. Just real quick history. 2 years ago, every California agency, I mean, think about this. This is insane. Literally got money deposited, however many sworn you had in their account, and it had to all go to wellness. So some departments, I think, did really well. I believe my department did great. They brought in somebody, myself, from the outside that has experience, and now they have a dedicated person. But let's be honest, like, grants are great and keep applying for them, but they're few and far between. Sometimes they're competitive. And if you don't get it, what's your plan B? What's your backup plan? So your goal should be, as a department for chiefs and command, is you need to get a dedicated person on your budget. It needs to be part of your budget. I've done a lot of wellness and peer support as a collateral duty, which is great. I personally liked it, loved it, but I had another job to do, right? Like the collateral part, I think we get used to that in law enforcement. Like that's just a given. You have to have those collateral duties, but just because there's so many resources out there, John pointed it out, there's great resources out there, but if you don't have a dedicated person to research those, vet those, talk to those people and see if it's a fit for your department, it's just going to go by the wayside. So, yeah, getting a dedicated person on your budget will help, with your people getting the resources, being more proactive and helping with self-care, all the things we're talking about. It will just be easier for you as a command and chief.
I think that's a really good point because a lot of, especially peer support, they're peer support, but they're also patrol. They're also wearing a million hats and they're busy and they're supposed to try to fit in taking care of other people while doing all the other things. So I think having that dedicated person, I think that's a really, really strong point. John, you were getting ready to jump in and say something.
No, when you mentioned sergeants being, I don't know, I might be paraphrasing, the backbone of the agency. I just, my radar got pumped up a little bit. That was the only rank I ever held. And so, when you talk about that role, I think that's the nexus between command and the troops. It should be anyways. And so it's less important for the chief to know everybody's names, right? But like the sergeant, I've always argued that the sergeant needs to be intimately familiar with their troops. They need to know that you're the coach of your son's t-ball league, and it's helpful for you if you can skate out a half hour early on your Friday, because right, like, but if I'm not connected to my guys and my girls, I can't be part of the solution. And I think because of poor planning, vacancies get created and we've mentored nobody to fill in. And so now there's this scramble. We put a list out there. We don't get the best applicant. We just get the guy who scored above the other guy. And we stuff him in a position with no training. And we're scratching our heads wondering why not only the shift, but the agency is starting to get sideways a little bit. And so I think just being super intentional about that rank and who fills that rank. And maybe it's not the best test taker, right? Maybe it's the guy whose emotional intelligence is above his peers, where he can be that conduit to bring everybody together to achieve that goal. And I've just seen the biggest thing that I ever leveraged in my time as a sergeant was being vulnerable, like letting my guys know that, I have failed horribly, and this is what I did to fix it. And so you can come to me with your failure and we're going to fix it and we're going to figure it out. And I just think that rank has so much power behind it, even more so, in my opinion, than the chief. I have an immediate impact on their lives. And so for us as a profession not to get that rank right, man, I think we could be creating some of our own problems.
Oh, there's so much I want to unpack. I know, Ken, you're going to say something, but real quick. So failure, just so every month we have a monthly topic. August, the entire month is talking about failure. So we'll have you come back and share.
Am I going to be the keynote on that? Am I going to be the keynote address on failure?
You'll have to compete with me for that one.
Oh, we'll run close 1 and 2, brother.
Right there with you.
John, I just, again, very eloquently said, I would just ask, I want to expound on that a little bit.
Yeah.
Because it really comes down to first line supervisors. We have a tendency, even in the wellness world, to talk about our sworn officers, deputies, state patrol. Absolutely. Police departments exist for police officers. Sheriff's departments exist for sheriff's deputies. But every one of those officers, every one of those deputies has a support staff person backing them up.
Yeah.
Taking
Well said. Yeah.
records, accepting their evidence and evidence control. The support staff also have sergeants. We just call them first line supervisors, and they are equally as important in communicating the culture, the mission, and the expectation that the chief has set for the organization. And I will tell you, You show me an organization with high morale, and I will show you a stellar first line supervisor core in that organization. You show me an organization with low morale, and the first place I would tell you to look for your root cause is your first line supervisors. It's really that simple.
That
Make
is
or break.
That is such a yes. And also, 'cause both of you guys, so John, you were talking about how, the sergeants should really know dispatchers too. Dispatch gets so just pushed to the side. They're not seen as first responders. However, what I've heard from multiple people on our team and officers that have had incidents, we had one of our team members who was shot, and when it was happening, he knew his dispatch and they knew him. And so when he did the radio call, she knew something was wrong just by the tone of his voice. And I've heard that multiple times that dispatch understood the tone of that person's voice, and those dispatchers saved the officers' lives because just from the voice. So it's really important to have a relationship with your dispatch, for sergeant, everybody. I think I think the disconnect, of course, with COVID, with quarantine, with everything that happened, it was one thing after another. We all went through a collective trauma together, and we're still kind of trying to figure out how to come back together. I'm an extrovert. Clearly, I like to talk and I like to talk to people. But during quarantine, I was like, oh, I don't have to deal with anybody. This is glorious. And I went introverted, and I still 5 years later, I'm like, I don't want to. And we all know, like, Gil Martin, my biggest takeaway from his book was everybody's idiots and assholes. That's how I was raised. That's my dad's mindset. That stuck in me. And I have to work really hard to be like, no, no, we're human, we're good. But closing off kind of just became, well, it was forced upon us. So coming back out and reconnecting, especially the younger generation that's growing up on the devices that went through that at a young age, we don't know necessarily how to connect. So we need to just put more emphasis on how do we connect in a healthy way. Even if you don't like the person, if you're working with them, you have to trust the person to some extent with your life.
100%.
All right. Well, this has been an awesome conversation. I've learned a ton. Great. Before we wrap up, what I want to do is, I always do this at the end, is if the listener is tuning in to just this part, what is your, 30-second mic drop moment piece of advice that you could give to the listener that they can implement into their life to make their life and career a little bit better? No pressure. I will start with, I'm going to start with Lawson, and then we'll go around.
For me, if you're a department, I would start some sort of wellness hour, some workout on duty. Make it mandatory. I like the way John says, like, make it mandatory. Don't give them a choice. The expectation is you should be in some sort of shape. Obviously not like academy shape, but some sort of shape. And also mandatory check-ins. And I would give them choices, not just with a therapist, but given choices. You're going to do a check-in either with a therapist, a chaplain, somebody from peer support if you feel comfortable, or a coach, just like our company, somebody that's in the field that doesn't work for the department, I think could help tremendously. And then if you're part of peer support at your department, maybe start some sort of fitness challenge, just to kind of get people together and do the challenge together. My department's currently doing a fitness challenge, and people are working out, both professional staff and our sworn staff, doing it together, and they're sending me pictures. That's awesome. So yeah, just implement stuff. Know it's going to take time, but you'll get there.
Ken, what do you got?
Yeah, I guess that, speaking to organizational leadership, I'm going to play kudos to our brothers and sisters in the fire service. If anybody does it right, it's the fire departments. They take care of themselves. It extends out to family. They have work systems that support rest and recovery. So it can be done. If it were easy, we wouldn't still be here going blah, blah, blah wellness years later, right?
Right.
So I'm not trying to say this is easy, but we got to start somewhere. And if you want to change culture, my recommendation is look at changing it in your academy classes. Start mandating check-ins for your cadets. start changing the culture at the entry level for the organization. And 5 years down the road, I think you'd be shocked at what kind of change you might see within the four walls of that organization.
100% agree with that. Thank you. John, what do you got?
So not everybody is fortunate enough to have a chief like Todd who gives a shit about him. So listen, hey brother, just listen. And when you do a good job, just be okay with people calling you out for doing a good job. Because if you weren't, I'd be busting your balls right now. So this is the thing, man. You got to own it. Nobody's coming to save you. And so if maybe your chief's not doing all the things that he should be doing for the agency, don't care. You need to take care of you. You need to make your self-care a priority. And in speaking with Ken, we want to talk about culture. Look in the mirror. See, the culture of you becomes the culture of us, right? And so if you can change you and that person looking back in the mirror, that spreads. Just like toxicity can spread, that empowering and that self-care, self-leadership component. Don't sell yourself short, man. You're amazing. You do a job that the majority of the people on the face of this earth want nothing to do with, and you do it well and with excellence and nobility. So take a look in the mirror, man. Love the person looking back at you, and know that the culture of you will become the culture of us.
Awesome. Todd.
What a humbling group of professionals. So mine is a little bit shorter, but my 30 seconds would be very deliberate about the check-ins, whether it's the first line supervisor, the sergeant, any other supervisor. Be deliberate about that. And what I do randomly is I send out resources for the police officers, whether it's EAP or some other wellness type. I don't want the police officer to have to ask me, hey, what's the number to our EAP? So I kind of force feed that, because if the officer asks me for EAP, then the chief might know that he needs EAP, right? So I send that out randomly so they have those resources at their fingertips. And lastly, just leave the place better than the way you found it.
I love that, because we've had many conversations when we ask a department, what's your wellness resources? Or like, oh, we have EAP. I'm like, okay, cool. What's the number? And it's like, if you have somebody coming to you in crisis, you need to know. And that was one of the best compliments that we got. Was we had done a training for a department. A couple weeks went by, and their peer support, we work very closely with the command. So everybody, like, we've worked with them to shift the culture. They're very supportive. And an officer that attended our training got triggered in it. And a couple weeks later went into peer support being like, hey, they hit on some things and I've just been sitting with it. And he, kind of broke down, and they were able to immediately spring into action with a plethora of resources. And it wasn't like, oh, because we had another chief have something happen. And he's like, a year ago, I would have been like, that sucks. I'm sorry. But this, because they'd actually implemented coaching and resources, they're like, oh no, we can help you with this. That's great. So awesome for doing that. I have a couple little wrap up things. So this is a great conversation. If you want to keep the conversation going, or you want to be a part of it, at the end of the month, I will announce the date of this. And if you guys want to join us for this call as well, we're going to be doing a live group coaching call. So first responders around the country can join into this call, be part of the conversation. If there's something that we talked about in this episode or the others that you're like, hey, I want to know a little bit more about that, happy to have those conversations. And just so you guys know, the next month after this, so every month we have a different dedicated topic. This is wrapping up our Prioritizing Self-Care series. And next month we are going to be navigating toxic work environments. So I'm pretty sure those conversations are going to be very interesting. And then the month after, as we mentioned, is going to be failure, because failure is not a 4-letter word. Well, it's not a 4-letter word, but you have to fail in order to have success. So we're going to lean into what that is and help reframe some things. So if you like these conversations, please reach out, comment, subscribe, do all the things that you're supposed to do when somebody puts out a podcast. And I love, Ken, that you tied in the blah, 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 something wellness, because that's literally where we're at with a lot of people. So we're just going to have that conversation. So thank you all again for being here, and until next week.